Wasabi guys, welcome back to another Commander video. Again, if you appreciate these and you like what I'm doing, I would love it if you subscribe to the channel. I enjoy having you here for the ride. Today we're going to be talking about yet another new Commander option, and this one's pretty crazy. Coming out of Commander Legends, Battle for Baldur's Gate, we have Raggadragga, Goreguts Boss. This 4-mana red and green human boar, a 4/4, is ridiculously powerful. I mean, not as powerful as I initially thought when looking through the rules, and we'll get to that later on. But what you're able to do here takes advantage of something that I think was a bit of a weakness for Gruul decks. Gruul is this very difficult color pairing for me to work with, and I've always disliked it because you have to balance mana production with also wanting a board presence that can smack your opponents really hard, and with me I like playing a lot of mana dorks. So if you're able to make something out of mana dorks, I'm already interested in your commander. So this one says each creature you control with a mana ability gets +2/+2, and whenever a creature you control with a mana ability attacks, you untap it. Now what this basically means is that your little 1/1 mana dork is going to be a 3/3 mana dork, so long term you're actually getting more value for the 1 mana that you put into those creatures. You're also able to attack with them first so that they'll untap and you can use their mana abilities in your main phase too. It's not super complicated, it's not even that overpowered in and of itself until you apply it to certain combos, which we'll talk about those later. And whenever you cast a spell, if at least 7 mana was spent to cast it, you untap target creature, it gets +7/+7, and gains trample until end of turn. That right there is very appealing. It's not the payoff that we absolutely need, but it's definitely going to allow us to threaten commander damage with Raggadragga, since if we're untapping our other mana dorks when we're attacking, Raggadragga may be the only creature that will still remain tapped. So it really feeds into what you want to do in these colors. You want to ramp up aggressively, get to your even bigger creatures, but this doesn't completely abandon your mana dorks after the early game, which is very common. You see mid to late game when you're playing one of these creature decks, your mana dorks are awful to draw into, and they're not going to be much better to draw into later in the game with this commander, but at least they can still untap. At least they're going to be getting +2/+2. They're going to matter a little bit more. First strategy I think is going to be a go-to for a lot of players, and that is elves. Obvious reason is that the majority of elves you see in elf decks are just mana dorks that tap for mana. So you could lean into the elf synergies because you have plenty of these 1 mana, 2 mana elves that tap for green, which is maybe the only downside to going that far into the elf strategy, is that you won't have nearly as many that tap for other colors. I don't really think it matters though what type of strategy you're playing. You're going to have a decent amount of elves. It's just your decision as to whether or not you want to insert more synergies with that tribe. And such synergies include Priest of Titania and Wirewood Channeler. These two are affected by your total number of elves and even your opponents. The Channeler could also be helpful later in the game for combos if you need more red mana, since it can tap for X mana of any one color. Circle of Dreams Druid could be even better than Priest of Titania. It is 3 mana, but it taps to add 1 green for each creature you control. So you don't need to have a strong elf synergy, and I think this creature is still going to be an all-star. Other mana dorks, and you may want to take advantage of these too for the fact that they have flying. Keep in mind that our commander does give creatures with mana abilities +2 power, so even though all of these have 0 power, they're still going to be flying blockers, they're still going to be flying attackers. So if you need to deal damage, you need to get something like the Monarch trigger, go for it. I think these are great, and you know you're going to be playing Birds of Paradise in this deck anyway. Even if it's not going to be good in combat, it's going to be one of your only mana dorks that's going to tap for red. The other two are going to be more beneficial specifically for their flying keyword. Other awesome mana abilities, we're talking about abilities that tap to add mana. It's off of an activation. Shaman of the Forgotten Ways is pretty brutal. If you remember the card Biorhythm, yeah, that's been banned for a long time. It has an activated ability where you can pay 11 mana, tap it to have each player's life total become the number of creatures they control. That's going to be very easy to get to. You only need creatures with total power 8 or greater, but it does tap to add 2 mana of any combination of colors. You can only use it on creature spells, but I have a feeling that's going to be the majority of what you're playing anyway. Selvala can be a very overpowering creature, but I guess it depends on how you build around this commander. If you are ramping up into larger creatures, then I think Selvala is going to be even more valuable. If you're going for more of a combat focus and combos associated with additional combats, I don't think she's going to matter as much. But whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you get to draw a card if it has a power that's greater than each other creature's power. And she does tap to add X mana in any combination of colors equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. So even if you don't get the first trigger there, you don't necessarily have to synergize with larger creatures. It's just nice when you get an engine off of these. Roshin Meanderer, again, you're going to want to build around certain cards in the deck, and this is going to be one of them. If you decide to go for more of an X-costed, specifically wanting to synergize with our commander's last trigger, then I think you're going to like this creature because you are tapping to add 4 colorless so that you could spend that 4 mana on those larger X-costed spells, and we'll talk about those at the very end. Now it's rules time. This tripped me up when I was originally going to make this video because I myself needed to go back and check the ruling for what a mana ability is. It's pretty easy to understand. Anything that can add mana off of an activation, it's not on the stack, so you can't counter it or you can't interact with it in any way. We have an example of some of those creatures in a minute, but these are ones that will actually be considered mana abilities. So things like Zertot Ancient, Regal Behemoth, Vorinclex, Voice of Hunger, any creature where using a mana ability would trigger and then add an additional mana, that is also a mana ability. It confused me at first because this rarely ever comes up. And usually when you have split second, it's not someone trying to stop you getting an additional mana one time. But I do like the idea, especially of Regal Behemoth and Vorinclex, getting to untap those, making those even bigger with +2 power, so that you're able to really lay the beat down and still get the payoff with that last trigger. Again, if you cast Vorinclex, you're going to give a creature +7/+7 and untap it. These are examples of mana abilities that aren't your typical tap a creature as if it were a land. No, these are examples of triggered abilities that are also mana abilities. Here are examples of creatures that will give you mana, however they're not mana abilities because they are not triggered off of an activation. I know it's very confusing because again, this doesn't really come up. So Grand Warlord Radha, Savage Ventmaw, Clouth Unrivaled Ancient, these are great cards. I mean, these are going to offer you combo potential as well if you're looking to fool around with additional combats, but unfortunately they will not be getting +2/+2 and they will not be untapping when they attack with our commander out there. Again, since the theme of the deck already is mana dorks and adding a bunch of mana, there's still value in playing these. You're going to find that they're also incredibly useful in a deck where the focus is attacking with a lot of mana dorks. And I say that because we have cards like Aggravated Assault and Hellkite Charger. Our commander option will allow us to untap our mana dorks when they're attacking, so it does synergize well with both of these since you can just use the mana that they're now able to tap for to untap them again and get an additional combat. Anytime you can combo off like this and get any number of additional combats until you're done with your opponents, it is conditional on whether or not your opponents are capable of blocking enough to stop it from happening. But I still like the potential here. I like how aggressive your deck can be with mana production and combat. With mana dorks, they're typically going to remain tapped while the rest of your board is doing something. So if you can also attack with them, you're basically widening your board. You're going wide and you're going big. Other ways to synergize with this, and I think this is tying back into Roshin Meanderer, where you're getting that last trigger where you're casting something that was at least 7 mana. You're giving a creature +7/+7, you're untapping it. You could use Burn and still make a pretty efficient deck because I think mana sinks are going to form a backbone. Anytime your commander deck, and I've built commander decks that are like these, where you play a lot of small creatures, they're very aggressive, they tap for mana. If you have nothing else to do, just dump a bunch of mana into X, and that's the spirit here. Multi-kicker, even. You can combine the burn out of what you're getting here with these with the combat bonus that you're getting off of a creature, so a +7/+7 bonus is nothing to scoff at. And similarly, I think this is even more powerful, but you could use the massive green spells, green sorceries that give you more creature potential, like Tooth and Nail for combos. You can get 2 creatures that combo with each other. I think Hellkite Charger and any mana dork that taps for several mana, that's probably the way to go. Genesis Wave is also great if you have, again, nothing else to do. Dump a bunch of mana into X and build your board up. Finale of Devastation, similarly to Tooth and Nail, you can get the Hellkite Charger out there quicker. Go off with our commander with all those mana dorks out there. And if we really want to focus on mana sinks, because that's what you want to do if you have a bunch of mana dorks, you don't just want them for combat, you want to be able to abuse them. So if you are using cards like Omnath Locus of Mana, don't let all that potential mana go to waste. Store it up on a Helix Pinnacle. I think the combination of these two are pretty ridiculous, and it's very underrated. I think a lot of people don't realize how easy it is to get to that 100, but it's actually surprisingly quick if you're up against a deck taking advantage of mana sinks. It may only be like 2 or 3 turns that you have until you just lose the game, and with that Shroud on top of it, it could be a headache to have to deal with. So that is Raggadragga Goreguts Boss. Hope you appreciate this video. those are just my ideas. If I were looking to build around Raggadragga, that's the gist. I would insert a lot of mana dorks, even more than the ones I've shown you, but those are just the most efficient ones. You have 1 mana dorks. That's going to make it easier for you to get Raggadragga out there. Then you can just start smacking your opponents with your mana dorks, and then spending your mana on main phase 2, continuing to build up your board until you eventually get to some type of extra combat card. That's going to do it for the video. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Again, subscribe if you have not already. Commander Void here. I will see you all next time.